So it's one thing to do it, to understand the things that you need to understand. But if you don't practice it, if you don't apply it in the real world, they just become words. They just become lessons. They just become verbs. So essentially, this house is supported by what? By the last little thing there, which then is entitled practical experience stroke lifelong learning. So you will need to really demonstrate those things that I've spoken to you about. And I know sometimes one could have then completed some training requirements somewhere. Maybe you're coming from SAIPA, maybe you're coming from SAICA, and you now come into this journey. Obviously, you don't want to be a trainee anymore. It's just not nice to be a trainee. But it will be good for you to understand what are then the practical experience requirements. In short, they call it PER, pair. So the requirements from a practical experience perspective simply says that we want you to be exposed to these things right here. We don't want you to do everything that we've spoken about, but at least the majority of it should have been applied, should have been seen, should have been learnt from a practical perspective. That's what they are saying. And if that's the case, obviously we don't want you to do it overnight. We'll expect you to do it over a period of 3 years. So this practical experience is normally around 3 years. And obviously, we know that under pressure, I could be just tempted to just believe that I've ticked this. So it does require a senior CIMA member to do it, to be involved. And when they're involved, then they will be able to sign off whether what you believe you are supposed to experience in order to be a CGMA, ACMA is sufficient or not. But if you are coming from a structured training environment, then it becomes easier because someone has already worked with you, like a senior chartered accountant, senior probably ACCA member. So you might have then been exposed to a similar training environment, such that there are remissions that can be considered against your existing training experience, and therefore you don't need to do 3 years before you can be given the stamp. And the nice thing about this practical experience requirement is that it does not necessarily require you to be, say, in a training environment. Because sometimes the problem with the training environment is that salaries are not as great, and it could be very admin intensive. So here they recognize that as a finance professional, you've got the flexibility to move. So you don't have, say, a training contract, but there are practical experience requirements. So we're going to talk about PER in our series sometime later and in much more detail. We'll look at the templates that CIMA has put out there, additional resources that I'll refer you to so that you can just understand the requirements. So those are some of the things that one needs to be mindful of. So that is the legal aspect right here that I just want you to be mindful of. It forms part of the professional qualification journey, meaning that you cannot be a CGMA, ACMA if you have not what? If you have not completed that. Okay, so now we know that there is that important element. Now let's just talk about the subjects and the exams.